It is now 5 o'clock. I will call the meeting of the WISD Board of Trustees to order. Please let the record show that all 7 trustees are present, and this meeting has been duly called, and the notice of this meeting has been duly posted for time and manner required by law. At this time, we will go into closed session according to Section 551.001 et sec of the Texas Government Code. It is now 5 p.m.
Like what?
6:05, we are going to reconvene back into open session. First item on our agenda will be our invocation led by Mrs. Starnader, followed by Mr. McCutcheon with our pledges.
Okay, please bow with me. Dear Lord, we thank you for the summertime. As we still work to make positive decisions for our students, we also get the chance to spend time with family and recharge ourselves. Also, on this Flag Day, June 14th, we salute all that she represents and pray for our military. Please keep them and their families safe and strong. At this time, I'd also like to offer prayers for our child nutrition family. They recently lost 2 employees, Tony Huddle from WHS and Nancy Griffith from Findlay Junior High. So we pray that you'll lift those families up in prayer. We ask all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
The next item on our agenda was the portion of the board meeting where the board receives input from our patrons. Each person who addresses the board will have 5 minutes to speak on his or her issue. Because of posting requirements of the Open Meetings Act, board members will not ask questions of the patron nor answer any questions posed by the patron. No action can be taken on any issue presented during the patron comment section of the board. Patrons addressing the board will be notified when they are approaching the last 60 seconds of their allotted time to speak. So right now, we have 2 signed up to speak. Our first speaker tonight would be Miss Sherry Lee. Would you please step forward, please? State your name and address for the record, please. I will be the official timekeeper, and I will let you know when you have about 1 minute, and then I'll let you know when you have a few seconds left.
Thank you so much. I'm Sherry Lee, and you want my address?
Yes, please.
It's 2200 Brown. That's apartment 314, Waxahachie, Texas, 75165. All right. Well, good evening. I am representing pre-K tonight, as my shirt actually says. So we have just some concerns with pre-K. We would like to be considered to having a pre-K center. We know that we're at Turner, and Turner is just bursting at the seams, or it was. And so we began to be moved into the elementary sectors. So I was moved to Northside, and Ms. Foster has done an amazing job at providing for us inside the classroom of small little chairs and small little tables and all those things that it takes to do pre-K in the classroom. However, there is an issue with outside the classroom. Let's talk about the bathrooms for just a minute. I don't think any of you would expect to go to the cotton patch and go into the restrooms and there be tiny little toilets on the floor of the restroom. Would you feel a little weird? Well, of course you would, because they're inappropriate for adults. Just as the same way that pre-K has to share bathrooms with kinder, first, second, third, fourth, and the big 5th graders that are way taller than I am. And so, that being said, we can't go into the restrooms to help them. Remember, some of them just turned 4 when they get to us. So they're tiny. Think of your kids when they were almost, little past 3 years old and all those things. My grandbaby, I think about her having to try to climb up onto this toilet that's really for older children. That's a big deal for us. We can't go into the bathrooms because, well, some of the older children might be in there. Even if they're yelling, help me, I can't get up or I can't get down. Either way works for us. Also, too, the lunchrooms. Let's talk about the lunchroom situation. Some of you may not know, pre-K has a different lunch than the rest of, let's say, kinder through 5th grade on an elementary campus. So what happens is that they go through the line. They're only able to get chocolate milk in the morning, but they cannot get chocolate milk for lunch. but everybody else can. They also sometimes serve little extra things like ice cream or cupcakes. Of course, they're made of wheat, right? So to be health conscious. So what happens is my little pre-Kers go through the line. They see those things out, but they can't have them. I had a few kids this year that had real issues with that. Why can't I have that? That should be something I should be able to get. And they're crying and they want those things, but they're not allowed to get that because of how the lunches run for pre-K. So what happens is we have such a sweet cafeteria staff that they would hide those things from pre-K while we were going through the line. And so as soon as we would go through the line, they would bring them back out for kinder through fifth. So my kids just did not understand how come theirs had to be different. They are 4, but they're pretty smart. So another situation are the recesses. The recess equipment is really geared more for kinder through 5th grade. My little bitties, they're hardly even big enough to crawl onto some of the stuff. And once they do, I would have to go rescue them from some of the stuff that they would be getting on because we're always watching them. They also wanted to climb onto the large monkey bars.
1 minute.
Thank you. I also wanted to talk about testing days. Testing days, my kids have to be really quiet. We can't really do a lot of singing and dancing like we normally would. That's for practice days and for the real test. There's not a lot of places for us to go to get away, especially at Turner. They can't just go down the street to another park or something. At least at Northside, I could take my kids to the park. So that being said, I would really appreciate the opportunity to at least address you on thinking about us for the next maybe bond election to give us a pre-K campus that we can work together for the betterment of Waxahachie. Pre-K absolutely sets the foundation
10 seconds.
for the rest of the school grades that come up. Those that come to us in pre-K wind up having a better success rate on your 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, all the rest of the grades. So,
Your time is up, ma'am.
thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for listening.
Okay, our next speaker will be Kelly Dively. Please step forward, state your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, I am Kelly Dively. I actually work at Turner, but I live in 504 Venice Drive, Italy, Texas. I said it correctly. Most people don't say, Italy. Italy, Texas, 76651. I am going to read this because I have lots of good information that I have worked on, so forgive me for reading it by rote. So I am a teacher, and I have been an ECSE teacher for 14 years at Marvin, and also now a pre-K collaborative inclusion teacher for 4 years at Turner pre-K. I have seen both models, a pre-K model and a pre-K through or kinder through 5th model. First, I just wanted to point out some positives. I think as a teacher, having to do with both models, what we feel like was best for practice for our kids as we look at the long-term planning. First, in the pre-K model, your administrators, your counselors, your speech therapists, all those have able to focus more in a setting that is more effective for pre-K through 4 years, and because they can focus and have that own little area to test and assess. That whole team that comes together, the DIAG, the psychologist, being housed in that area makes a better access for our special needs student that are in ECSE, formerly known as PPCD. So that's one of the pluses that the team has being in that one location. Also, it is also helpful on resources. So if we have a pre-K with all the resources all in one house, it is actually used better effectively, and we actually have better teacher collaboration spontaneously, not just coming together. Being separate, it's a lot harder being able to do the curriculum and collaborate. We also have our common areas, which is the STEAM, the garden area, and our specials teachers. With our pre-K, we have teachers that are special teachers for PE, music, art, and computer that are specialized just for our 3 and 4-year-olds. A lot of times when you go to a kinder through 5th campus, they are certified only kinder through 4th or 5th grade, depending on when you got your teacher certification. So another thing that we look at is, are we able to give them the best services for those specials versus being in a pre-K model. Thirdly, we want to look at social emotional behavior, because we know that's a huge impact for our students at that age. They're just learning those social skills and self-regulation. So if in a pre-K center model, it helps if a child is losing control in self-regulation in a common area, such as the cafeteria or STEM. You are able to address that behavior in that specific spot, which usually leads to better able for that child to be able to learn in that certain area, instead of in a kinder through 5th model. Sometimes they get moved aside because of either you've got big kids coming through, the bigger population, you have your assemblies, your state testing, so your schedules will change sometimes, which with the autistic and the special ed students, that's very difficult for them to understand what's a state assessment at 3 and 4. So fifthly, a pre-K center is designed specifically, like Sherry Lee said, specifically for their size. It actually will help them be more independent in their social skills, their self-care skills. And so overall, everything is specific for that size of a child. And also at our Turner, our pre-K our playground is specifically sized for our kiddos. So we ordered it, we have
1 minute.
size in mind. So, and we also have Turner Town, which I'm not sure if you're aware, but we have the tricycles and the tricycle track and the little towns. And so that is very critical and a support that we need at a pre-K model center. So those are just a few positives that I wanted to point out. As you long-term plan, we would like for you to discuss and think about a child development center in Waxahachie ISD, because I know personally I have seen the benefits in a pre-K model versus being in a kinder through 5th model, those kind of things. So I thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Cool. Next item about human resources, Ms. James.
Good evening, Board. I would like to ask that you approve the personnel report as presented by the superintendent in closed session, and I ask that you approve professional contracts as presented.
Need a motion?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Mr. Schofield, second by Mr. McCutcheon. Is there any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Motion carries 7-0.
I think we have some introductions.
Okay. We have 3 of our administrators that we hired at this time. One of them here is Rusty East. He will stand up. And the principal of Coleman. He will be our new principal for Marvin Elementary. And we have Ashley Treat. She will be our new CTE director.
Thank you very much. Okay, Ms. Bridges, recognitions.
He didn't introduce Griffin. Griffin must filthy.
We have a lot of recognitions this evening, Board. It is so nice to consistently have students and staff who are doing great things. So first this evening, I'd like to invite 2 very accomplished students up, Anthony Alvarado and Katie Jenkins. Both of these students have qualified for National Hispanic Recognition by the College Board National Recognition Programs. To do this, they must score in the top 10% in the state on their PSAT and have a 3.5 or higher GPA. Anthony is a 2021 graduate of Global High School, is moving on to the University of Colorado, Colorado Springs to study cybersecurity. Katie is a 2021 graduate of Waxahachie High School. She'll attend the University of Texas at Austin in the fall to major in Plan 2 and ultimately attend law school. So please join us in congratulating these students. Next, I'd like to invite Dr. Philip Morgan up to do some recognitions. Where is Dr. Morgan? There's Dr. Morgan.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mrs. Bridges, Dr. Kane, Dr. Averett, Mrs. Mott, board members. Tonight we're gathering to recognize some of the most outstanding fine arts and UIL academic students at Waxahachie ISD. We had a lot of those this year despite COVID, and we're very proud of that. These scholars have surpassed basic expectations and pushed on for state and national level recognition in their respective areas. First, let me welcome up Ms. Courtney De La Cruz at Howard Junior High. Hi. Yeah, just right there in the middle, yeah. You would expect the theater teacher to make a grand entrance. There we go, lovely. Ms. De La Cruz, you're receiving a citation/resolution tonight from the Board of Trustees that reads as follows. The successes of the Howard Junior High one-act play cast and crew for 2021 Ellis County UIL Cooperative and Academic Contest. The Howard Junior High School executed a brilliant 2021 one-act play performance, earning first-place accolades this year, establishing a tradition of excellence in competitive theater. Additionally, you worked as their director carefully with the ensemble to ensure acting and exhibition of the live one-act play performance was excellent with the TTAO adjudicator. We congratulate you on the following first-place district championship this year. Howard Junior High one-act play district champions. Congratulations. And now let's welcome up Ms. Glenna Reisner, UL Academic Elementary Coordinator for Wildman STEAM Academy and Marvin Elementary Schools. Ms. Reisner coordinates UIL academics and manages individual events across the programs from maps, graphs, and charts to oral reading. This year, in the midst of a virtual UIL competition, the first of its kind, she took on the challenge of entering the campuses, making Wildman and Marvin the only two WISD K-5 campuses to represent at UIL. Not only did they compete in a very difficult year, they went ahead and won first place overall in the entire fourth grade category. They captured the first place overall fourth grade division championship, besting Ennis, Red Oak, and Corsicana Elementaries to finish third in the fifth grade overall standings as well. They are receiving a resolution this evening. Ms. Reisner, you're receiving this for a first place district championship in fourth grade overall academic meet for UIL. Also multiple individual event champions across Wildman and Marvin Elementary Schools, as well as competitive spirit in the face of challenging circumstances in the 2020-2021 school year. Congratulations on this recognition. Supporting principals of the UIL competitive schools are Kate Authier, Wildman Elementary, and Ms. Christy Kubin from Marvin. Congratulations, Ms. Reisner, on your UIL successes. And now, Ms. Reisner also is the Destination Imagination sponsor for Wildman, Marvin, and Wedgeworth Elementaries. They continued their academic example of excellence in DI this year, placing first in the state in the service learning team portion of Instant Challenge competition. This contest involves competitors competing in a challenging STEM, fine arts, or combined STEAM task in a pressure-filled time situation. Here to receive individual recognition for their first place state finish, Donna Sierra, 5th grade, Wedgeworth Elementary School. Lily Caldwell, 5th grade, Marvin Elementary School. Lola Saucedo, 4th grade, Wildman STEAM Academy. And who's not with us tonight because she's in Alabama with her family, but also is a member of the state championship team, Abby Wilms, 5th grade, Wedgeworth Elementary. Again, the academic coach of DI for Wildman, Marvin, and Wedgeworth is Ms. Glenna Reisner. Supporting principals are Ms. Kate Authier, Wildman, Ms. Christy Kubin, Marvin, and Mr. Tim Day, Wedgeworth. Congratulations to our students in DI. We are so proud of your state championship and all of your successes this year. One more round of applause.
Next, I'd like to invite Greg Reed up to do a couple recognitions.
Hello, good evening. It's great to be back to honor some student athletes tonight. We have 2 athletes tonight we're going to honor, and then we've got a couple of coaches we're going to recognize as well. So I'm going to ask Landon Davis to come up. And then Coach Tracy Wood, our head baseball coach, is here to talk about Landon.
Landon was nominated for Academic All-State this year. He was on a 4-point scale, a 4.0 and 4-point scale. Pretty good, right? He's going to the University of Texas to study aerospace engineering. That's what I said, aerospace engineering. Fine young man. Mom has done a fantastic job with this guy. All that unimportant stuff over. He got the biggest hit of the season against Duncanville. If he don't get that hit, we don't keep playing. We don't go to round 2. This young man also was part of a senior class that fought through a tough year, to say the least. Very proud of him. He's going to do a lot of good things, and I keep reminding him. I said, I've treated you real well as a senior, because I know he's going to make a lot of money at some point in time. So, really proud of Landon. Appreciate you.
Our next student athlete, she's not with us tonight, Emma Curry, is who we're going to recognize, but I'm going to ask Coach Scott to go ahead and come up and say a few things about her.
Good evening. Emma had a really great senior year. She holds the school record in the 800, the 1600, the 3200, and the distance medley relay. This season, she was the district champion in the 800, the 1600, and the 3200. She was the area champion in the 1600 and 3200. She qualified for state in the mile and the 2 mile. At the state track meet, she finished 8th in the 2 mile and 4th in the mile and set a new school record. She was named Texas Girls Coaches Association All-State and Academic All-State, Texas High School Coaches Association Academic All-State, Texas Track and Field Coaches Association All-State and Academic All-State, and she'll be attending Vanderbilt running cross country and track. So we're really proud of her. Thank you.
There's a lot of states and a lot of zeros in that introduction. I'm going to ask Coach Goldberg, Greg Goldberg, to come join me, as we're going to recognize 2 coaches next. Coach Greg Goldberg just completed his 5th season as the WHS men's head basketball coach. He's appreciated and favored by our own stakeholders, but he's also well respected by his peers all around the country. Now, Greg is a regular on the speaking circuit, and he has presented to thousands of basketball coaches around the state. His clinic presentations and teachings go beyond just coaching basketball. He's a master of getting the most out of players and instilling a level of confidence in themselves that multiplies their mental and physical abilities and their potential to succeed. Last month, Coach Goldberg received a very special honor, which in my mind is a reflection of what his peers think of him the most. The Don Coleman Outstanding Coach of the Year Award is given annually to the Texas Association of Basketball Coaches on behalf of the Texas Association of Basketball Coaches. Tonight, we're recognizing Coach Greg Goldberg as the recipient of the Don Coleman Outstanding Coach of the Year Award, representing the state of Texas in the classification of 6A. Congratulations, Coach Goldberg. Coach Colton Goldberg, if you could join me. Coach Colton Goldberg is the first assistant and right-hand man of our head basketball coach. Colton just finished his 4th season coaching and is a rising star in the basketball coaching community. Sitting courtside at games has allowed me to see Colton grow both with his rapport with students and his ability to manage the parts of the game that's been delegated to him by Coach Goldberg, Coach Greg Goldberg. The choreography of the two Goldbergs is fun to watch, especially in those strategic and high-level moments. The Texas Association of Basketball Coaches annually recognizes an assistant coach that exhibits a high level of coaching ability and impact on his team. In May of this past year, Colton was honored by the Texas Association of Basketball Coaches as the Texas 6A Outstanding Assistant Coach of the Year. Congratulations, Colton. As they go back to their seats, I tried to do some research, and I actually called one of the board of directors for the TABC because I wanted to find out if there had ever been a father-son tandem that had ever received these two awards. He could not say that he did or did not know that. So in our eyes, at least tonight, we believe we made history in having both Coach Greg Goldberg and Coach Colton Goldberg receive these outstanding awards, and we're extremely proud of them.
Next, I'd like to invite Lisa Mott up to recognize our LEAP Academy graduates.
Good evening, Board. Dr. Averett and I would like to present our graduates from the LEAP program tonight with it's a desk plate, very nice glass thing for them for participating in our LEAP program. We selected 6 LEAPsters in November, and they've gone through the spring. They've done panel information sessions with current district leadership, and they've done a lot of scenarios this year. Dr. Averett brought in a lot of different scenarios for discussion points. Our leadership program is hopeful in placing aspiring principals, and we do have already a placement this year and then one placement from a previous LEAPster class as well. So we're real excited for our LEAPsters. So if we could have Valerie Fell. Sonia Champion.
No, come on.
Kristen Hughes. Whitney Trevino. Lori Hanna. And Christy Bragg. Miss Bragg will be our new assistant principal at Clift. And also Also, a new assistant principal this year, Crystal Cortez, was a Leapster, I believe, 2 years ago, and she is now the assistant principal at Simpson. So we're having a great placement rate with our Leapsters.
Invite Philip Gerke up to give a presentation about a transportation employee.
Thank you. Members of the board, Dr. Kane. You go through the school year and you want to recognize people for their accomplishments, and this year has been completely different from any other school year that I've been involved with. With COVID and everything else, we've seen loss, and we lost one of our own this year, and it was heartbreaking. So I'm just here today, and thank you for that privilege to honor and recognize someone that worked for WISD for a little over 8 years. They worked as a bus driver and as a bus monitor, and I'd just like to recognize Mr. Jerry Lawrence. He can't be with us here today. His picture is there. I believe Judy is here for him. Did she make it? Yes.
Good.
Come on up, Judy.
Can we receive it for him?
It was a privilege to work with Jerry for just a short amount of time that I had. When you put your kids on the bus, you want to make sure that you're putting them in good hands, and they were always in good hands with Jerry. So, thank you.
We can still take a picture and hold his picture up. Miss Pam, we need a picture. Your family would never forgive us if we didn't take this picture. Like the Academy Awards, you're accepting in honor of.
And board, finally this evening, I'd like to invite Ms. Kim Bridgers up.
Oops.
She'll need that to keep them alive. How are y'all this evening? Thank you. I'd like to introduce to you an extraordinary child nutrition employee, Tamara Mitchell. Tammy has been an employer's dream from day one. Not only does she have a bubbling personality and an infectious smile, but Tammy demonstrates passion and integrity to our child nutrition department. She's an extraordinary role model who repeatedly maintains perfect attendance, and trust me, it's rare to meet an employee who actually feels terrible and apologetic for needing time off. Wish I had 100 just like her. Her values and professionalism motivate our team and others to be better people. Treating others with kindness and respect comes very natural to Tammy. Her standards are high, and that's by no mistake. Her self-imposed work ethic is unmatched, and her determination is exceptional. So tonight, it's my honor to present Tammy Mitchell with the Exceptional Leadership Award.
Thank you, board.
Mr. President, we said we hired 4 administrators, and we did. We just recognized 3 because they were here, but I know a lot of people who are watching online in our vast viewing audience, and those here were also wondering if Rusty East is not going to be at Felty, well, who is? So I am proud to say that, not that Rusty East can be replaced, because he cannot, but Brittany Griffith is going to give it a shot because she has been named the new Felty principal, and she will start tomorrow, I'm sure. She has been the assistant principal there, and we're very happy to have her. So she couldn't be here tonight.
Okay, next item on our agenda will be our reports. Item A will be our central office staffing. Mr. Starnader, I believe you asked for this to be put on for discussion.
Yes, thank you. I really didn't have a lot of discussion. I just wanted to throw this out there, and I guess it's going to go with item B, which are budget constraints, and that is many times when, you know, at the last regular meeting, we obviously were talking about all the things we want to do that we may not have money to do, but I just wanted to throw this out there. Many times when there's talk of ways to cut back, freezing hiring on certain administrative positions, possibly central office ones, is discussed and or implemented. So I just wanted to put that out there as we continue our discussions for consideration. And I mean, I don't have any recommendations on how to do it, just, yeah, throw that out there.
Any questions or comments? Okay. All right, moving on to item B. Did you have something else?
No.
Item B, our budget constraints discussion, be the third round. Mr. Colton.
Well, I'm locked out, so I would switch over to the amazing PowerPoint that I created.
Didn't happen to a better person.
Well, all right. I'll bring up the super cool picture in a minute. Now the next one. You'll get to hear this presentation in a minute. Okay, this one. Board, just wanted to recap what we've talked about the last couple of times. We've talked about budget and constraints. Want to make sure that we have, by we I mean I, have your directive clear as we go through setting the budget and making our plans and priorities for next year. What I heard at the last meeting was that going forward, the top little box, I guess, I didn't close in on the sides, so oops, that's not going to work out well for a geometry class. But above that second little red line, things that I think you've told us, but these aren't really things that we're going to accomplish in one given year. They're going to take a little bit of time for these to factor in. But item number 1 is consider elementary buildings with capacity of up to 800 students. Kind of transition from that 550 student elementary more to the Wedgeworth size of a capacity of about 800. That will take some time and more than likely bond funds to add additional spaces to those campuses. And then adjust our secondary core class cap from 25 students to an average of 28 students per class. That again will take a little bit of time as we have a good number of teachers on contract, and but that's something that we can look at going forward. Things that I heard, or I believe that I heard you say for next year, would be a mandatory minimum 5% salary increase for our auxiliary staff. This would be our aides and child nutrition and custodians and grounds and maintenance and security. This would be on top of any other increase that all other staff would get as well. And then also heard a minimum of $1 million to go into fund balance to kind of help us boost that fund balance going forward as we continue to grow and meet other additional funding needs. And then as funds remain, these will be the more discretionary things. Hire staff with the expectation of 600 additional students to show up for the 21-22 school year. Implementation of the TASB salary survey recommendations. That was overall presented as roughly a 3% increase in payroll. About 1.1 million of that was salary adjustments So adjusting of the pay scales to meet more market expectations for where we are, and also a rough 2% increase for all other employees. And then as funds are available, look at additional departmental budget requests and allocations. So I just wanted to make sure that I heard this correct and that I didn't get anything in the wrong category, things that you think should be a mandatory non-negotiable. I hope that I did not put them in the as funds remain category or vice versa. So that's what I'm here to check tonight.
Mr. Colton, will
Yes,
the 1.1 million in salary level adjustments, will that take care of those true anomalies and move those to where they are not making less as an administrator than they would make as a classroom teacher?
The 1.1 million in salary level adjustments would take care of all issues identified by TASB that are not in accordance with the going market rate for that position. So it would make sure that there would be some gap based off market determination between teaching scale, administrative scale. It would also make sure that our employees are paid in accordance with the market as defined in that TASB salaries survey.
Okay. And then back to the, go back one to, no, the adjusting of the class average.
Yes, ma'am.
To 28 per class.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that a high school teacher could, I'm sorry, what's 28 times 6, could have that many students. Let's see, 30 times 200. That's a lot of students, if that's the average per class. So some classes would be over 30. I mean, we need to have a maximum that they can have in a class, because what I'm seeing there with an average of 28 per class, an average, is that we could have a teacher that has, say, 30 or 32 in a class. I used to. But the classrooms are a lot smaller now, and the kids are a lot different. That's a lot of kids to put on a teacher.
Well, then thank you, Ms. Krieger. That's actually why we're doing this now, is to go back. And so what we need to do, because the last meetings, what we thought we heard was the board agreeing to this. So if it's something we need to go back to, we need to determine what that cap is that you're talking about. You know, like no teacher would have more than X, and what the and then we would calculate that, and then redo all the other numbers. I mean, I don't know how much more it would cost, but we need to, if that's the board's pleasure, to do that. But that's when we came back to check. So
I just know that an average of 28 per class, and there would be those teachers that had 28 per class.
if I remember that, when we looked at this, that we were still below the area, even at this number. That's kind of where we came up with. When we were at 25,
we were, if I'm not mistaken, this move saves close to $1 million.
Yeah, so
Yes.
So what we need,
just making that switch, if you could do it all in 1 year, you're saving about $960,000.
so what we need to do, because everything else is based on that, is go back and kind of adjust some of these other numbers, which is fine. That's why we're here.
Well, what I'm seeing, though, is that we had a class cap of 25.
And that was very, very, very expensive,
Okay,
and
that was
drove
very,
everything
yes,
else.
ma'am, I understand. Like I said, I had the 30 and 32 in a class often. But then the average, so you're looking at two different things. They had 25, and now we're saying an average of 28. I mean, I might be better with a cap of 28.
But it also distorts when we say it can't be an average, you cannot have a class more than 25, then that makes us hire more teachers, because to have an absolute threshold, because that means you may have 14 or 15 in one class because of the scheduling, but you could not have more than 25. That's why it's such an expensive option.
Could you do this? You leave it at an average of 28, and give us a report on the breakdown of the classes?
Yes.
That way we could see actually how many were over 28?
Because I think y'all were pleasantly surprised when Dr. Averett and Ms. Harris came up with the high school chart that we showed you, that there weren't any that were over. What number was there not over? Yeah, the average is 21. Because when we say it absolutely cannot go above, we have to back it up a little bit. So we had like the smallest high school classes.
Right, and I totally understand that. Like I said, I used to teach 30, but it's just putting the average at 28 may put 30 or 32 in a class, and, you know, that's what I'm saying is not acceptable.
Well, and I'm not arguing with you. I'm just saying we need those numbers so we can go back and redo because we just have X amount, just like your household budget. There's just so much money, and then when you're looking at $1 million change, we need to kind of backfill.
Well, like Mr. Audrey said, what we need to look at is with our growth next year, I mean, we may need to hire another teacher, you know, I mean, we need to look at what our numbers.
That's a possibility. We could go ahead and adjust, set it on this and see what it looks like. Because I think you meaning not you personally, you editorially, would be shocked at how small some of the classes are. A lot of teachers point out to that one class they have, but the rest of the day they have 18.
Right, and I do understand that. I'm just really concerned about the word average of 28 per class because of the anomaly, again, of the teacher that has 28 in all 7 of her 8 classes. You know, that would be where the problem is.
But it could also go the other direction, and they could have 3 or 4 with 20.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I'm in favor of keeping it at 28.
And then we just look at it.
But I would like to see a report.
Maybe every 6 weeks, give a report just on kind of like the one you create. You create it, or did we just put it into PEMS and it printed it out?
Well, I created PEMS.
Okay.
We pulled the class counts from PEMS for WHS, and that's how we put that chart together.
Is every 6 weeks too much? Would it be better every semester? I mean,
It's easy to pull that.
okay, so why don't we say the first 6 weeks and then semester, and then the end of the fourth 6 weeks.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
I just want to say our ask, I guess. I don't want to make an arbitrary decision as I look at Ms. Harris in the back of the room and Dr. Averett over here. Are you comfortable at that number? Do you think it works, or are we making something up? Because I'm not in the business of deciding. Y'all know how many kids you have in your rooms and schedule. You don't need me telling you.
So if I'm allowed to speak, so initially we were working under the model of no class above 28. You know, we were trying to keep all classes below 28. So that kicked off. You had one class of 29 or something like that.
You had to totally redo the schedule.
And so we provided that report on about every 6 weeks.
Right.
First year that I was here. When you look at an average of 28 is, I agree with Ms. Kriegel. You have 7 classes, 28. That's 196 students. That's a heavy load. Okay. But what that also doesn't say is that at 28 we have a problem. One class may have more than 28. One class may have 15. Kind of depends on where the class is in the schedule of the day. So, you know, depending on if it's up against band or athletics or whatever, it may be lower class counts. So, not having a set number so that you cannot go over ever is different than having an average.
Ms. Harris, do you have feelings you would like to share or wisdom that we could spread around?
I just think it's important to remember that we are going to have anomalies. We are going to have the students that, because of certain CTE clusters, singletons, that we may have to overload certain classes. They may have that, like Dr. Averett said, you know, we may have that one class that's got 28, but that same teacher the next period may only have 15. There are going to be those situations. You know, under our current situation, they're here, they're coming, and I think our kids received an amazing education last year, including those kids that were 28 to a class. It is where we're at. I'm comfortable with it. I've talked to some principals in some neighboring districts that they're seeing numbers up to 35 in a classroom right now, and they felt like those students were well served. So I think that, Ms. Kriegel, I do agree with you that, and what Dr. Avery said, when you look at a teacher having 190 kids, that's a lot. That's a lot of, load to carry. But again, that's not what we're seeing at all.
I'm sorry, Ms. Harris, what, I didn't quite catch the word you used. I'm only talking about core classes. And what word was it you used when you said you talked
Some
to
anomalies. Okay, so case in point, say a student may want to take an AP course or a dual credit course perhaps, but that particular student is also in a certain CTE cluster. Well, that English, because there are so many singletons in that student's schedule, there may be a math class that student has to be in, and we may have to bump those teachers' numbers a little bit just because that's the only class period where that student's schedule will allow for that student to be in that particular class. Do you follow me, Ms. Kriegel?
I'm totally following you.
Okay. And so those are some rarities that, where you may see a higher number, but that's not the norm.
Well, I would like the reports when we have them.
I'd like the opportunity to run our numbers. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so Mr. Colton, what I'm hearing is that we will go forth with this, and Billy, make certain the minutes reflect that Dr. Averett High School will bring a report to the board at the end of the first 6 weeks, at the end of the third 6 weeks, at the end of the fourth or fifth.
Dr. Kane, could we also get a report at the beginning of school, because that's when we need to hire, if we need to hire teachers.
Okay.
That we're going to need to know.
Okay, we will have a report, let's say 2 weeks from the day, 2 weeks from the first day of school.
Right, so that way.
Yeah, 2 weeks from the first day of school, that'll give you a chance to level classes.
Yes, ma'am.
And then at the end of the first 6 weeks, third 6 weeks, fifth 6 weeks.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay? And then we can discuss, how many anomalies, as opposed to if we change that, how many kids wouldn't get to take all the classes that they want. Okay?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Colton? Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Board.
Okay, next item would be item C, 2021 bond survey results. I believe Mr. Gamble.
Well, Miss Jenny
Miss
has.
Jenny.
Yeah, no, well, Miss Jenny has an introduction to make.
Board, Matt Gamble from Base Life and Associates drove up from Austin so that he could present our survey results. We contracted with Base Life to do a survey pretty quickly after the bond election in May, just to get our communities, take our community's pulse. And so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Matt.
And there will be time for questions.
Okay, cool. Yeah, good evening, everyone. With Bass Leeson Associates, we're a national research firm, she said, in Austin. We conduct a variety of surveys on all sorts of topics. One of the areas we do a lot of work in is with school districts. We work with over a dozen school districts a year. We've done over 100 of these types of surveys interviewing voters about bonds or TREs. We went into the field, I guess it was a week after the last bond election, and interviewed 300 voters to get a sense of why the last bond failed. And I just want to go over some of the high points of that, of our findings. First of all, we did interview voters who both participated in the election and who did not participate in the election. So part of our charge is to find out what everybody out there feels like, but then we also are going to be drilling down into our reports of those voters that voted versus didn't vote. You'll see some differences between them. 32% of all of our respondents said they voted for or would have voted for the bond. 59% said they did not. Obviously, this doesn't match what the actual results were. It was 42% yes, 58% no. But when we look at those who did vote, and we look at the proportion of the for to the against, when we extrapolate that, that goes to 39 yes, 61 no, which is very close to the 42-58. All right, so that's telling us that the survey is very reflective of your voters. We also found that the parents and the non-parents were pretty similar in their support of the bond proposition. Typically, you find parents more supportive, and so this is maybe one of the first indicators we see, perhaps why it wasn't successful with not having a majority of our parents in support of that. We asked the respondents to tell us, and this was very early in the survey, one of our first questions, why they didn't vote for the bond, and we categorized their responses into these groups. They're going to add up to over 100% because some people said things that we counted in multiple categories. About 2/3 of respondents told us they were concerned about their taxes going up. That was followed by 30% mentioning things about the fiscal management. 19% mentioned you had just built a high school. Only 16% felt you didn't need one, and you have a few people that wanted some more information. We found that there's some overlap between the fiscal management that you had just built a high school. So kind of together, 40% of our respondents were saying the last bond wasn't executed very well, or the district isn't spending money wisely, or you should have enough without needing to do another bond, or you had just built a high school. And then we also found that 2/3 of the respondents who said they were concerned about taxes heard that the ballot language said there was a tax increase, but there actually wouldn't be one. So the issue is not all of them are believing that information. All right. We followed that open-ended question up with the closed-ended question, and we gave them a list now to pick from. And 43% said that their biggest concern was the tax increase. 32% said they didn't think the district would spend it wisely. You'll notice that only 3% of respondents chose a category. They didn't like a specific project in the bond. Going back to the open-ended question, we didn't see a lot of people say anything about they didn't like the fact that you were going to use Coleman for the second high school. We didn't get a lot of people saying they're opposed to a second high school. Those didn't show up in the open ends, and they're not showing up in this question when we ask, was there something specific about the bond you didn't like? It's really, no votes are driven by these larger issues. There was a difference between those who voted and those who didn't vote in terms of what their biggest concerns were. We asked what their second objection was, and you see kind of more of the same thing. It's really the tax increase and trust with district spending. We asked them what their level of trust and confidence was with the Board of Trustees, as well as the Superintendent and Administration. The plurality of respondents have some level of trust and confidence, and then it's about equal when you look at the extremes, the great deal and none. We're finding a correlation with the amount of trust and confidence they have with the leadership and their support of the bond. So the net support of the total sample on that Prop A was -27. That's just the yes minus the no. When you look at those that have a great deal of confidence, their net support of the bond was a +42. If they only have somewhat confidence in the board, the net support was a -24, and then it goes down from there, and the same is true with the superintendent. So the more we can increase the level of confidence they have in the leadership, the more we can see support of the bond go up. We asked them if they felt that if the district had enough schools and classrooms to meet the needs of the next 3 to 5 years, or if they thought more were needed, and really some interesting things from this question. The first, just over half think more are needed. So, that's good that half is, over half feel that way. But the other way you can look at it is just over 4 out of 9, 4 out of 9 is 44%. So it's 46% don't think the district needs more schools and classrooms. So that's obviously a hurdle. And the other challenge is that even if those think you need more schools and classrooms, they were split on the bond, 46 to 44. So it just shows the level of, or the environment in which we're working. Those who even say, yeah, you need more, they're concerned about their taxes. And so it just kind of paints the picture that we're in. This is a long question, but we essentially told them about the ballot language and the tax, and that it says that there's a tax increase, but there isn't actually one, because you're really extending, we find that we kind of explain it by saying you're extending the current tax to take on more debt, and so that's why the ballot says it's a tax increase. If they were told that taxes wouldn't actually increase even though it was on the ballot, would they find that to be believable, not believable, or just too confusing? All this there. So here's another issue that we have, right? So only 23% found this to be believable. 35% just think this is confusing. We drilled in and we looked at, it was 14% of those who voted heard this information and actually believed it. All right, so that's why you're seeing 65% of people say, I voted against the bond because I thought my taxes were going to go up. Not everyone heard this, and most of the people who heard it either found it too confusing or not believable. The more trust and confidence they have in the board and the administration, the more believable they find this information. We asked the respondents, first of all, if they knew that the bond was going to create a second high school, and then after that, if they said they had heard that, we said, well, based on what you heard about it, did you favor or oppose that proposal or the proposed plan for the second high school, or did you not have an opinion of it? The first thing to point out is at the very end, that gray bar, 50% didn't, SRH means see, read, or hear, so 50% didn't even know that the second bond was going to allow for a second, or the bond would allow for a second high school. And then when you look at those who did know, it's really kind of spread out. 15% of all respondents said that they heard that information and that they opposed the plan. When you look at those who voted, it's very similar to the total sample. They're more likely to have heard that information. So you see the didn't see, read, or hear it is lower. Only 16% of them, though, heard about this and opposed it. And this other box here is just showing you the percentage among those who got asked this question. One of the things that's not showing here, but that we found in the data is that even those who heard about the second high school, opposed it, and when we asked why they were voting no, they mentioned things about taxes and trust. So even if you had done something differently with the plan, you're likely not to have picked up their support. All right, so our key findings, trust in district spending and taxes were really the leading reasons for opposition. It wasn't the proposed plan for that second high school. Only 14% of respondents heard about the tax language about the ballot and actually believed it. 16% of those who knew the bond would create a second high school opposed it. We asked respondents just in general, do you support or oppose creating a second high school to deal with growth? And 60% supported it, 28% don't. And then among those who oppose the second high school, 65% say it's because you just built a new one. It wasn't, we offered the choice of you want to stay in one high school town, that's not an issue. UIL issues is not an issue. It's the fact that you have just recently built one. And if you were going to go forward with the second high school, they'd rather you reuse Coleman over building a new one, which makes sense to me, thinking back to the concerns they have about taxes and spending. So I know that's a lot of data. I want to just hit the high points with you. I'm here to answer any questions that you have.
I have a couple. How does your firm choose the respondents? Is it computer generated? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. So actually, we obtained the voter file from the county and performed a phone match to it. So tried to get as many phone numbers as we could for those voters, and we dialed every single one of them randomly until we hit our quotas. So we really kind of put an emphasis on trying to dial those that had voted in the last election or more likely to be voting to make sure we get a lot of them in the sample. But it's pretty random, and then we're setting quotas and ensuring that we get the right number of interviews by region, gender. We monitor the calls throughout the night to look at the age distribution as well to ensure that we're collecting, as we're randomly dialing, collecting a representative sample.
In the room get called for the survey? 2.
Did you finish it? Did y'all take it? Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, my second question, did the survey in any way indicate what if we would have divided it into propositions, or if we did a kind of a blanket bond?
Yeah, so we kind of elected, I think, to do more of what had happened, and we had talked about the potential of doing a second survey moving forward with more planning as you may gear up for another bond. We did have 2 questions at the end that get to that, this hypothetical. We asked them, would you vote for or against a bond that would create a second high school that would not increase taxes, that would be reusing Coleman, and 60% said they would vote for that. Of course, we're telling them that if their taxes wouldn't increase, you're going to have to tackle that confusion about it. But we did that to then compare it to another proposition. We said, would you vote for $250 million in bonds, which would increase taxes by about $15 a month to build a second high school in a new building, to see, was it the issue that they just didn't like repurposing and they wanted to spend the money on building a new one? And we found in that question, 58% would vote no, 37% would vote for. So it goes, had I known the issue was the taxes, we probably wouldn't have had to ask that question, because we would have known that they're not supportive of a tax increase to get that new facility. Those are the only what ifs kind of that we gamed out for the future.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I had
Yes,
a
ma'am.
question. What percentage was it that the respondent had a child in school? Because I didn't find that a very high percent.
Yeah, so that was 32%. 32% of our respondents had a child in school. Keep in mind that we're really modeling our demographics off of the likely voters. And so I think in your full report, you'll find a slide that shows a breakdown of the age distribution of your total voter registration, different levels of participation in presidential election. If you look at like all the last May elections, those are dominated by senior citizens, right? And so we're sort of, we're close to what happened in the May in terms of that age distribution. And so that's why you're seeing not that many parents, because we're trying to look at the likely voters.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you very much. Okay,
No,
next.
and to that, ma'am, to your point about the parents, when we looked at the internals of the poll and looked at the parents versus the non-parents, they weren't very different on a lot of things. So the parents felt very similar ways about as the non-parents did on a number of the questions. So anyway, all right, thank you.
Thank you. The next item D, our ESSER, our third update. Mr. Colton?
In my super cool PowerPoint from earlier, I have one more little slide for you. And let's see if we can get there. ESSER update. Okay. Board, as we've talked about previously, the district is expecting to receive about $8.9 million in ESSER 3 funds. About $5.9 million of that is available immediately. That's been sent by the U.S. Department of Education to the state of Texas. The remaining 2/3 will be released upon review of the state of Texas application by the U.S. Department of Education. Can't even begin to give you a timeline on that, but that's kind of what we're waiting on at this point. As part of the grant reimbursement, we have to seek input from our community to help determine the most appropriate way to spend this funding. So you may have already seen or heard that we have posted a survey. We've sent it far and wide. It's on the website as well to try to get responses from all of our stakeholders, parents, business owners, taxpayers, residents. We want to hear what are the things that you know about that we should be focusing these ESSER 3 funds on as we look to spend them. They're available over the next 3 years, so this is not anything that we're going to necessarily spend all immediately up front, and it's not necessarily something that we want to focus for payroll related, because there's no continuation of this after September of 2023 or 2024. The survey will close this coming Thursday at 4 p.m. It is on our website, and on my computer it works super cool where you can click the little thingy and it goes right there, but I didn't give technology a heads up on that. My apologies.
Joe's back there.
If you go on our district website, if you go on our district homepage, www.wsd.org, there is a box on the homepage right under the infographic that says ESSER 3 survey. Also in the emails, that Ms. Bridges sent out, there's a straight up hyperlink that goes right to the Google form that is the survey. So that's where we are at this point. We hope to gather that information, and then we'll have leadership sit down and try to review the information, try to come up with a coherent plan for spending almost $9 million of non-recurring funds over the next 3 years to help meet those things identified by the stakeholders.
To be presented to the board as a recommendation or for discussion at the July regular meeting.
We have about over 900 people take the survey already. So just so, so the board is aware, we are getting launched into it.
That will help us make a decision.
Any questions for Mr. Colton? Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Next item is our refunding of bonds. Mr. Witt? No, he's here. There you go.
All right, so with that, I'll invite Doug Witt to come up. Doug's our financial advisor with Samco Capital, and he would like to talk tonight about a preliminary bond refunding.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. All right. So it's good to be back. Appreciate the opportunity. We do have some good news to talk about, assuming I can work the screen here.
Go ahead and show Ryan out today.
There we go. All right. Okay, perfect. All right. So when you look at this graph, you've seen it from us before. It's called the Bond Buyers Index of Municipal Bonds. It's a national index of tax-exempt interest rates that municipalities issue bonds into this market. And going across the middle, you'll see a blue horizontal line that shows the average. The bottom left corner is back in January of 2001. So this is a 20-plus year history of this particular index, and the average is at 4.14%. The high point on the graph was October of 2008 at 6.01%. That was the Wall Street meltdown, if you will, the precursor to the Great Recession, as they called it. Liquidity dried up, interest rates went way up, and so forth. Then you go to the right, and we have a different crisis. This is a health crisis. You'll see a dark scratch mark there. That was the very start of the pandemic. The markets were really in shock and moving everywhere. It created a scratch mark there in our market. Then we come out on the right, on the other end, and we set the record low for this index at 2.02% in August of 2020. You may recall that at that time we were refinancing another set of bonds for interest cost savings and taking advantage of those interest rates at that time. The one we have for you today to talk about has a call date this summer. And so there's different optional redemption dates that we take advantage of. We remain at very, very low levels in terms of interest rate. I would like to take a survey that says if you could borrow that money at 2% rather than some other, would you like to do it? Because the answer, of course, would be yes. But so with that, we are looking at low interest rate environment. This next page is some historical statistics. So column 2 is your net taxable value after freeze. In 2010, 2011, on the heels of that Great Recession, there were some minor adjustments to your tax base. And then in 12, 13, and 13, 14 was a minor kickstart. And then you've been growing very rapidly. I'm not telling you anything new there. Since 2014, 15, your tax base has been increasing steadily. And here in the past 3 years, the last 2 years plus the upcoming year, you're back to double-digit growth in tax base in this district. Column 4 is your maintenance and operations tax rate. I would also like to conduct a survey to see if they knew that their tax rate was actually coming down during this period. In column 4, you can see you're at $1.17 beginning in 14-15, and then in 19-20 and 2021, the INS tax rate, the M&O tax rate actually came down and was reduced. Your INS tax rate, the voted bond tax rate in column 5 has been at 38.39 since 2015-16 and steady throughout that period. And so when you look at your net INS fund balance in column 9, in the 14-15 tax swap year, we purposefully drew that down, and then it's begun to rebuild. So the next number at the bottom there at 4.6 million is not an audited number, it's an estimate, but you're looking at substantial increases to your INS fund balance. And given that the bond election did not pass, a good use of that is to pay off principal early of existing bonds. That immediate use of that actually creates bond capacity to be able to address the needs, which according to that survey, it appeared that it was well recognized that there's facility needs in the community. So if we do, for example, use $2.5 million of the roughly $4.5 million, it will put us back in that $2 million range of INS fund balance. So it's a good opportunity for you to pay off $2.5 million of existing principal, pay it off early. So that's our historical stats. Here's our current debt service profile. It's very flat, going out to 2038. Then there's a drop off and then another drop off. And with this flat debt service, as your tax base grows up and your payments are steady, you continue to build that INS fund balance and are able to pay off bonds early. So it creates a very nice profile for you. You can see the red bar at the top. Estimated tax collections are greater than the current debt service, but you do need and will need to address your facility needs. And so if we can pay some of these bonds off early, pending that next successful election, you will be in better shape to be able to address those facility needs. So here are your approaching optional redemption dates. Again, in 2020, we took out a big bond and saved $4.8 million. The highlighted in red here, the 2011 refunding bonds that are outstanding is $21.7 million. Again, right in the middle of this chart, the call date or optional redemption early prepayment date is August 15, 2021. So we're here before you tonight to seek your authority to delegate decisions to the administration to refinance this bond and pay some of it off early in order to take advantage of those interest rates. Now, the other bonds that you look down, the qualified school construction bond, someone else is paying that interest, so it's not really one that you would pay off early. And then the 13 and the 14 were refunding bonds back in 2013 and 14, and they have call dates in the middle of 23 and 24. There's no current plan with that, but if we get to 2023 and 2024, it's conceivable that those bonds may be paid off early as well, depending on your tax base and what we do with any additional voted bonds. In 2025, sometime between now and 2025, you will have another very large refinancing program, refunding program of the 2015 bonds that have the 2025 call date. The one we're focusing on tonight is refunding and paying off early a portion of the 2011. And so this is a summary of that. It is a current refunding. That's a term under federal tax law because we will be at the call date, which again is August 15, 2021. It's $21.7 million. We're refunding those maturities, and we're looking at $2.5 million of INS fund balance, taking it from 4.5 plus back down to the $2 million level and paying principal off early. And again, lowering the interest rate from 3 to 5% to something around 1% to 1.85%, depending on the maturity. So a substantial lowering of interest rates. So there's two forms of savings here. One is paying bonds off early, and the other is lowering the interest rate on the bonds that still need to remain outstanding. And then the third component to that is shortening the payment schedule, which I'll show you momentarily. But this is about $8.5 million of reduction in your principal and interest. Since we're putting in $2.5 million, we treat it as a net savings of $6 million. And that statistic there of 21% is very, very, very large. The rule of thumb is that if we have a percentage there of 3%, we're doing good. And when you have this type of percentage, it is, we would call it a no-brainer in terms of refinancing this bond. So here's what the payment profile would look like post-refunding, post-early redemption. We would create essentially a balanced budget for your next year INS fund. In addition to paying off $2.5 million early, it creates this kind of profile that's not perfectly flat with perfect drop-offs, but at some point you're going to be able to fill in those gaps with additional voted bonds that take on additional facility needs. And we've already paid the other bonds off earlier than we ever could have anticipated when we issued those bonds. And so that's the game plan with respect to this. The schedule of events is we've been visiting with the administration. tonight on June 14th is the board meeting to review this program and consider adopting the order authorizing the issuance of the refunding bonds. We'll go through the process this summer. We'll look at closing the refunding bonds around August 25th and redeeming the outstanding bonds on September 1st. That kind of time frame will also dovetail with your budgeting discussions when you do your maintenance and operating, which is the big budgeting discussion, but you do have to tackle the INS account, and it will be similar in conversation as to what we're talking about today. So the required motion is on the screen. You are adopting an order authorizing refunding bonds, establishing parameters and delegating authority to the administration to complete the refunding. And so with that, I'll answer any questions that you may have about this particular refunding or refinancing program.
I was just curious about one thing. I'm all for obviously bettering our position for our taxpayers, but just out of curiosity, are there professional fees involved, or, for lack of a better word, closing costs to do
There
this?
are, and there are, and those closing costs are built into the numbers. That's the footnote at the bottom of this page. Yes, there. And when you look at the size, the closing cost, as you would call them, for a home mortgage, for example, the closing costs for this are submitted to the Attorney General's office as part of the transcript. Those fees then go to the Comptroller's office for a posting. And so we can share with your administration exactly what 5, 10, 15 other school districts with like bonds, like size bonds, paid in the cost of issuing their bonds. So there is a robust data source to be able to prove up that you're getting a fair deal with respect to closing costs on this type of transactions, including the Attorney General's filing of those.
And I'm assuming that, Mr. Coleman, you're comfortable with what has been proposed?
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
And this item's on the consent agenda, and by approving the consent agenda, the wording is. It should be voice activated. April's gonna be 5 minutes.
Okay, our next item will be our preliminary EOC star scores. Dr. Avery?
Okay. So first off, I want to say hats off to our teachers, administrators, our testing coordinators, parents, technology staff that helped pull off STAR testing this year. We tested more students online than we ever had ever. Ms. Hilbert did a fantastic job getting us prepared for the state's requirement for online testing. Mr. O'Daniel did a great job last spring and in the summer of getting devices for us to do that program. And so that's going to set us up better for when we have to be completely online. So thank you to everybody. Thank you, Ms. Hilbert. I'd also like to say thank you to Dawn for putting the data together real quick for us, even though these are preliminary scores. We don't have the final scores yet, but she got the data together and she crunched the numbers for us. And so here's a few bright spots. So first off, EOC results. We know the students have to pass 5 EOCs to graduate from high school. That's Algebra 1, English 1, English 2, U.S. History, and Biology. What we saw was our EOC results. We were pleasantly surprised with what we saw from those results. We had several areas that improved. WHS English 1 and 2, we saw modest increases. We know that English 1 and 2 have been tough to pass for us in most districts in the state. Our U.S. history scores, they held steady at around 94%, which is about 2 points below where they were in 2019. We also saw some pretty good gains in U.S. history in the meets and masters level scores. All 3 junior high campuses improved with their Algebra 1 scores in all 3 scoring categories. Coleman Junior High saw significant double-digit increases in algebra, meets and masters, so proud of those folks. EOC areas for growth, we did see a bit of a decrease in Algebra 1 at WHS, about a 10-point from 2019. And we saw some decreases in our meets and masters category in another campus. And I've talked to, actually Mr. Lynch and I have talked about this a couple of times. One of the things he's lamented all year is that we didn't feel like we could teach
at the level that we've taught in the past, and I know that that's a focus for all of our campuses. Junior high scores, we had some good bright spots. Grade 8 science scores were steady. We only had minimal decreases there. Grade 8 social studies, which is an area that we've had a focus on, actually saw some increases. And we saw on a couple of our junior high campuses, and we saw those two actually gain in the meets and master's levels as well. But we did have some significant areas to address. We saw double-digit decreases for 8th grade math and reading, same for 7th grade math, reading, and writing, and same for 6th grade. Elementary scores, we also saw some bright spots there. Grade 5 reading saw increases in master's level scores for 5 of our 9 campuses. Meets grade level scores improved on 5 of the 9 campuses for grade 4 reading. Meets grade level scores for grade 4 math improved on 4 of the 9 campuses. And master's grade levels for grade 4 math improved on 5 of the 9 campuses. Areas for growth, 3rd grade reading and math saw decreases on most of our campuses at the approaches grade level score. Majority of our campuses did see decreases for the approaching grade level scores for grade 4 math, reading, and writing. Writing had a significant drop. We know writing's been a focus, and it was a tough one this year for 7 of our 9 campuses. And grade 5 approaches grade level scores for math, reading, and science saw decreases from across the district with a few exceptions. Obviously this year, 2020-21 is a baseline year for Simpson because this is first year in operation. So last thing I'd like to say is it's important to repeat, and we've said it a lot, that we expected to see a drop in our STAR scores this year, our performance this year. We believe that data does clearly show that there was a COVID slide. We do not have state and region scores at this point. We hope that we get those soon so we can compare how we did to the state and region, particularly because we believe we were with in-person, face-to-face learning most of the year for most of our students. We hope to provide an updated report when we do have state and region scores later this summer or as late as fall of 2021. We believe that once we are able to see how we performed in comparison to state and region, that we will have an established baseline and where we need to improve as a district. And as Mr. Colton said, we're currently soliciting input for how we can use those ESSER funds to address these areas that we know we need to address. My comments are not a commentary on anybody's hard work this year because we know it was really hard work, and we had folks doing double duty sometimes in online learning and face-to-face, and I think I'm really proud of how hard our folks worked this year, and I feel confident that we've got the right people in the right places to address the things we need to address when we get back. I'll answer any questions if you have.
I know that's a lot of data.
Well, and of course, when we get this regional and the state scores, we may be really, really, really happy, or we may be not as happy with these scores as we think, but we think we're going to be above everybody else because of that continuous.
Is there an anticipated date on when that'll come up?
They actually sent something before the meeting started, and I'm not certain if they were final. Could you two tell if those were final that?
I didn't see that email yet.
Well, they sent something, and of course, it went to Dawn for the number crunching, but what it said was,
I don't need an exact date. We're talking the end of June?
Well, I know that the parent portal's open.
Spring 21 STAR EOC reports. This communication is informing me of the availability of reports for the Spring 21 State Assessment, STAR EOCs. You're going to get standard and additional reports. You're going to get rosters, summary reports, and data files. So I think it's here. Oh, there's Dawn. Get up here. What are you doing hiding back there? Get up here. You should be giving this report.
So the only thing that came out today was the final EOC results that just, they put it final in the portal. The other scores don't come out. I think some come out Friday, another comes out, next batch comes out the following
This Friday and next Friday. Okay,
but
so
as far as region and state, they haven't given us any dates for that. I don't expect that until the end of June.
but I think when we get more confidence in the numbers we get, we can call Ennis, we can call Red Oak, we can call Midlothian and get some regional comparisons.
So right now, there's a spreadsheet that's.
Well, if they don't, that'll tell us something too.
So right now, my cohorts had a spreadsheet out there that you can put your scores, but no one's been brave enough to put their scores out there for anybody.
Why don't we? We've been braver than everybody else from this beginning, put them out there.
I will tell you, I've talked to some other districts and our numbers were higher. So that's why I'm very, like Dr. Averitt said, very optimistic that we will show that we were higher than many.
And
others.
face-to-face learning is the way to teach. Teachers belong in front of kids, and kids belong in classrooms with teachers. We would have had you up there soon if you weren't hiding behind Foster back there. Foster, what are you doing covering up for Hilburn?
Anything else?
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Avery. Okay, moving on to our consent agenda, we have items A through N. Have already been asked to remove item L for discussion. So if there are no other individual items to be removed, I will entertain a motion to approve consent agenda items A through K, M, and N.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Rogers, second by Mr. Schoolfield. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Motion carries 7-0. Okay, item L, consideration with possible action to approve the replacement flooring, computer lab flooring repair, and asbestos abatement project at Northside. Colton.
No, I think there was a question from a board member that we were going to answer.
So item L, as our maintenance department was going around and investigating our campuses before the bond election that we had in May, they noticed one improvement that we can make at Northside would be to remove the flooring that's currently over there. We also are aware of an issue in the computer room that we need to address flooring as well. And so the plan was, within the bond, to use some of the $6 million that was in there for campus improvements and renovations and turn around and tackle this project. That bond was unsuccessful. So at the time that bond was defeated, our maintenance department did not have $256,000 in their account, their campus refresh account, to go out and perform this work. So we were thinking we were going to have to wait until the next fiscal year. Well, that bond was defeated in May. We normally, towards the end of May is the end of the school year. We start looking at other accounts within the district that may have some under utilization, and we identified 2 accounts that we felt comfortable saying these accounts are not going to be utilized. We could not get the items that those accounts were intended for this year in this fiscal year, so we, the business office, turned over about $190,000 worth of additional funds to the maintenance department, and they used their campus refresh money plus identified budget monies from other sources, and they were able to come up with the $256,000 for this proposal. And so this is one of those things that it's been on our list of things to do. We anticipated being able to do it with bond money. That didn't work out. We thought we were going to have to wait till next year, but we reprioritized some other budget money to make this for an item for your consideration tonight.
So there's a spot where the floor is collapsing?
I can't go in great detail because I'm not exactly sure, but my understanding is yes, there's like a hole that's kind of been covered over with the piece of carpet.
I was just going to say that's
no.
probably where old Kiva was.
It's not collapsing, all it's like is coming up.
Oh,
And it will not adhere back. It's going to have to truly be floated and everything in that area.
okay. I was just going to say that may be where an old Kiva was.
It shows my lack
If anybody knows what the Kivas were.
A disaster.
Do what?
A disaster.
Yeah. Yeah. No, they were fun. They were
Until they
awesome.
filled up with water.
Are you north side?
Questions or comments from Mr. Colton? Okay, at this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve consent agenda item L. Motion by Ms. Timmerman. Second by Ms. Starnader. Is there any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Motion carries 7-0. Okay, we have one action item tonight. Consideration with possible action to approve website hosting content management agreement.
Board members, if you will look at this document, we put in your agenda that because we were shocked at how many people applied and responded to our RFP, that Mr. O'Daniel wanted to make certain that we vetted each one, because to get a new website is a big deal. It can be more or less painful depending on how wise we choose to get it implemented and set up. So this is the summary provided by the business office. And Mr. O'Daniel, do you want to come make your recommendation?
I didn't prepare anything, but if you have any questions.
Which one are you recommending and why?
I think through the committee, we determined that Blackboard was the most likely to succeed.
That's not real confidence building, okay?
There's nothing 100% in my world.
It's technology.
100%. All we can do is get as close as we possibly can.
Ms. Bridges, would you save Mr. O'Daniel here?
Well, I mean, if you go off of the scoring system, I mean, they were
Yeah.
way ahead of everyone else. It wasn't even close.
Blackboard works with many of the largest districts in the state, so we felt very confident that they could continue to be a good partner for us and grow with us as we open new campuses and enroll more students. And they also have more functionality than our current provider, so I think it'll be a good change.
And the number of districts that they currently have was pretty impressive, to be honest.
I mean, if this is Mr. O'Daniel's recommendation, just good enough for me. I think everyone's been very happy with the changes he's made with our technology.
Oh, absolutely, without a doubt. So our recommendation, Mr. President, is that we go with Blackboard.
Any other questions or comments? Okay.
I have a question, Mr. Autry. Mr. O'Daniel, is this something new? I mean, or is this just like having somebody redo our website? I mean, I guess
It's
I'm
the
confused.
platform.
It'll be the content management system is what we use to manage everything that gets added, deleted, new pages that are created, how we operate with it on a daily basis. So right now it's fairly difficult to do that because we use HTML5, a lot of code. You know, I have coders on my staff, and the current system doesn't allow us to have that freedom to do things like that are easier for us to do. It's more proprietary than what we typically see. So this system allows us to do that. It's just easier to use, easier if you need something done on a web page for that to get done faster.
Okay, I just wondered if, you know, if it's something said new, but and I guess it is. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
We've been using it for about the last 3 or 4 years to host our website and content management system. So this is just moving to a different company for a service that we're.
And board, just to temper expectations a little bit, you're not going to see this upon, if it were to be approved tonight, you're not going to see a change tomorrow. This is going to be something that's going to take a little while for migration and for building. And so I think you're probably looking at something, Ms. Bridges, correct me if I'm wrong, somewhere towards the end of this calendar year. January. So you're not, this is not anything that's going to be, you know, necessarily live tomorrow or next week or the end of this month. So just kind of to temper those expectations a little bit.
Ms. Kriegel, we would like to kind of tell the teachers, we're going to have this, we're going to have this, it's going to open. Ideally, it would be over the Christmas break. Then the staff comes in, puts the new, and teachers don't have new students, as a rule, too many. Half the year is over, and it should be, to me, that's the ideal time.
And we don't want to overload our staff also, so we're being really careful how we roll it out to make sure it's done properly, get everybody's point of view and say, okay, now we're ready.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. O'Daniel? Okay, at this time, I will entertain a motion to approve the website hosting content management agreement as presented by Mr. O'Daniel. Motion by Ms. Kriegel, second by Mr. McCutcheon. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion carries 7-0. And I need a motion to adjourn. Motion by Mr. Schofield. Second by Ms. Starnader. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you very much.